Dear friends, before we go to our news, let's not forget
The UK economy, challenges, resilience, and future prospects. Recent global economic turmoil and internal dynamics have placed significant pressure on the UK economy. While harsh terms like collapse are occasionally used, current data and analysis reveal that the economy is following a volatile course, facing significant challenges, but also demonstrating a degree of resilience. High inflation, the effects of the energy crisis, global supply chain issues, and post-Brexit trade dynamics stand out as key factors shaping the UK economy. Macroeconomic indicators, growth and inflation dynamics. To understand the overall health of the UK economy, it's necessary to take a closer look at macroeconomic indicators. Growth rates, the story of fluctuations. According to data from the UK Office for National Statistics, ONS, the UK economy contracted by 0.1% in May 2025. This was primarily due to contractions in the manufacturing and construction sectors. This contraction, contrary to expectations, indicates a short-term slowdown. However, this data represents a single month and should be evaluated within a broader perspective. Indeed, in the first quarter of 2025, the UK economy recorded a remarkable growth rate of 0.7%. This was the strongest quarterly performance in a year and placed the UK among the fastest-growing economies among the G7 countries. Annually, gross domestic product, GDP, increased by 1.3%. This data suggests that the economy is undergoing a bumpy recovery rather than a slump and is capable of strong performances at certain times. This growth, achieved despite the global economic slowdown, demonstrates the UK's resilience. Inflation, a persistent problem. Inflation remains one of the biggest headaches for the UK economy. Although the overall inflation rate has slowed down due to falling energy prices, it remains well above the Bank of England's 2% target. Core inflation, in particular, inflation excluding food and energy, remains high. This is due to wage increases and persistent increases in service sector prices. High inflation erodes households' purchasing power, causes real wages to fall, and increases the cost of living, thus suppressing consumption. For businesses, rising costs negatively impact their profitability and investment decisions. The Bank of England has aggressively hiked interest rates to control inflation. However, markets remain uncertain about the timing of interest rate cuts. It is anticipated that the rate cuts may be slower than expected due to persistent core inflation and geopolitical tensions. This situation keeps borrowing costs high, increasing pressure on both businesses and consumers.
Labor market and unemployment. The labor market has been one of the areas of the UK economy that remains relatively strong. According to 2023 data, the unemployment rate is hovering at 4.1%. Despite the pressures created by global crises and inflation, the fact that the unemployment rate is generally under control does not support a scenario of a complete economic collapse. However, the labor market is not without some structural problems. Labor participation rate. In the post-pandemic period, labor shortages continue to occur in some sectors. Factors such as long-term illnesses and early retirement affect labor market participation rates. Wage increases. While nominal wage increases remain high, real wage increases may remain negative due to high inflation, which puts pressure on workers' living standards. Skills mismatch. In some sectors, mismatches between the skills needed and the skills possessed by the workforce persist, affecting productivity. Trade and the impact of Brexit. Post-Brexit trade relations continue to have long-lasting impacts on the UK economy. Withdrawal from the European Union, new customs regulations, bureaucracy, and disruptions in supply chains pose challenges, particularly for small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs. Trade volume. Significant declines in trade volume with the EU have been observed. This situation is driving British exporters to seek new markets and can increase import costs.
Foreign investment. The uncertainty created by Brexit may have dampened some foreign investors' interest in the UK. However, London's position as the financial center and the structural resilience of the British economy are ensuring continued investment in certain sectors. Labor mobility. Restrictions on EU labor could lead to labor shortages, particularly in sectors such as healthcare, hospitality, and agriculture. Future expectations and potential risks. There are both positive and negative scenarios for the UK economy in the coming period. Optimistic scenarios. Falling inflation. Inflation is expected to decline more significantly as energy prices continue to decline and global supply chain issues ease. This could open up room for the Bank of England to cut interest rates. Resilient labor market. Low unemployment rates and continued employment growth could support consumer spending. The strength of the service sector. The service sector, which makes up a significant portion of the UK economy, can maintain its dynamism and continue to grow. Government policies. The government's anti-inflation, growth-supporting, and tax policies will play a key role in the economic recovery. Risks and challenges. Persistent inflation. If inflation does not fall as rapidly as expected, the Bank of England may need to maintain tight monetary policy for an extended period, negatively impacting economic activity. Global economic slowdown. The economic slowdown in China, recession risks in Europe, and uncertainties in the U.S. economy could negatively impact global trade and investment, potentially hindering the UK's foreign trade. Geopolitical tensions. The Russia-Ukraine war, developments in the Middle East, and other geopolitical risks could put new pressure on energy prices and supply chains. Debt levels. High debt levels in both the public and private sectors could increase vulnerability to interest rate hikes. Productivity challenge. The UK's long-standing productivity growth challenges could limit its long-term growth potential. The UK economy is facing a complex and challenging period. Rather than a collapse, it portrays an economy grappling with a series of internal and external shocks, but one with strengths and structural resilience. While high inflation and the cost of living remain the biggest challenges, the relatively strong labor market and growth performances in some periods offer promising signs. The future of the economy will depend largely on the success of combating inflation, the trajectory of global economic developments, and the policies implemented by the government. The UK will need to demonstrate its resilience and adaptability to weather this challenging period.